Today our topic is learning and memory. So actually learning and memory, these two are interrelated things. When we learn something, we acquire or develop memory. After development of memory, we learn new things with respect to our old memories. New things are compared, similarity and dissimilarities are compared with the old memories, and then we learn new things. For example, when we enter into in the MBBS, as MBBS student, we learn anatomy in our first year. So we learn anatomy and gradually we develop memory about the anatomical aspect of human body. Now the learning develops memory of anatomy, and when we go to our surgical classes, we recall the memory from anatomy classes, like what is the structure of thyroid gland, what is the anterior triangle of neck, etc. So these memories are utilized to learn new thing in surgery classes. Then when you are exposed to the patient, you treat the patient, what happens? You have to recall all your memories of the MBBS classes. You have to recall the physiology, anatomy, pharmacology, when prescribing some drug. You have to recall the pathology, medicine, surgery, etc. So we acquire knowledge by learning, and learning develops, it is stored as memory. So what is learning? Learning is a process of acquiring knowledge. And memory, it is the process of storing knowledge which can be recalled if required. Some memories are there that cannot be recalled, we will discuss later. But usually the memory is the process of storing knowledge which can be recalled if required. Now learning, it is of two types, associated learning and non-associative learning. So first come to associative learning. Associative learning is what? In this type of learning, we study association between new response and stimulus. Association between the stimulus and response is learned by pairing of the stimulus and response. And in non-associative learning, we do not pair any stimulus or response. So associative learning, it is of two types, classical conditioning and operant conditioning. The classical conditioning, very well-known example is the experiment done by Ivan Pavlov on the dogs. That is the ringing of bell, food and salivation. Relation between ringing of bell, food and salivation. That is the classical conditioning studied by Ivan Pavlov. What happens here? Here is two stimulus are paired. One is known as conditioned stimulus and another is known as unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned stimulus are inborn stimulus like salivation after seeing the food. So food and salivation, it is a pair of unconditioned stimulus and unconditioned response. But ringing of bell, it does not normally produce salivation. So when we develop salivation by ringing of bell, by pairing ringing of bell and food, it is known as classical conditioning. What is done here? First, conditional stimulus, that is ringing of bell. Then there is unconditional stimulus is applied, that is food is given, and then the salivation is studied. So when these two things, conditional stimulus and unconditional stimulus are paired repeatedly, what happens? After some time, after ringing the bell without giving the food, the dog will salivate. So that salivation after hearing the bell is a new response which is not found usually. किसी में भी ऐसा नहीं होता है कि बेल की आवाज सुनने के बाद salivation हो. But due to a special training, due to a special conditioning, this response has developed. And this type of response is known as conditioned response. So this type of learning, it is known as classical conditioning. The second conditioning is operant conditioning, and it is also known as trial and error conditioning. What happens here is a naturally occurring response is either strengthened or weakened by positive or negative reinforcement. Now you can see here the positive reinforcement is usually reward and negative reinforcement is usually punishment. Now, for example, it is seen in an experiment that a cat is caged, and at one side of the cage, a lever is there. So, out of curiosity, the cat presses the lever, and pellet of food is released. So, gradually, the relation between the food and the pressing of lever get established. That means whenever the cat wants to have a food, it presses the lever. So this type of naturally occurring response, they are strengthened here by food, because food, it is a stimulus which is rewarding in nature. But this response can be weakened if the stimulus is punishment giving stimulus, like if the cat presses the lever and it gets electric shock, then gradually such type of lever pressing will decrease. So such type of conditioning or learning in which the naturally occurring response is either stimulated by giving reward, or it is weakened by giving negative stimulation, that is by giving punishment. Now, non-associative learning, I have already told that here we do not pair any stimulus and response. We do not study association between stimulus and response. And it is of two types, sensitization. It is by two types, sensitization and habituation. And this sensitization, what is sensitization, what is habituation, that is well known from the class of synapses. Now, sensitization and habituation I am repeating here. What happens when any sensory experience is there? First time, initially widespread area of the brain gets stimulated. There is accumulation or release of calcium ion that leads to release of neurotransmitter. First time. But what happens if that stimulus is sensation is stimulating either reward center or punishment center? Then gradually the response increases due to increase in the concentration of calcium ion and increase in the release of neurotransmitter. So that is sensitization. And just opposite is habituation. If the sensory experience is stimulating neither the reward center nor the punishment center, then first time there will be widespread response, but gradually the response start decreasing due to gradual closure of calcium ion. So less and less neurotransmitter will get released, and the person or animal will get habituated to that stimulus. That means now they may not responding to that stimulus, or there may be very little response to that stimulus. Now, what is the neural basis of learning and memory? What changes occurs in the nervous system? Neurons, and there are 5 neural bases, that is sensitization, habituation, post-tetanic potentiation, long-term potentiation, and long-term depression. And I think you know all these points. These are the features of synaptic plasticity. So synaptic plasticity plays a very big role in learning and memory. Now I have already discussed sensitization and habituation. You all know all these properties as these were discussed in the class of synapse, but a revision is here. First is habituation. Just abhi मैंने बताया कि in this a neutral stimulus is applied. Neutral stimulus means the stimulus is neither exciting the reward center nor it is exciting the punishment center. Such type of stimulus, neutral stimulus is applied, repeatedly, then what happens? Initially it evokes response, but the response gradually declines and then fades away. This is due to gradual closure or reduction of calcium channel in the presynaptic neuron, leading to gradual decrease in the release of neurotransmitter. The sensitization is just opposite of habituation. It leads to augmented postsynaptic response. Means postsynaptic response will increase gradually due to increased presynaptic facilitation, that is increased concentration of calcium ion in presynaptic nucleus. That increases cyclic adenyl cyclase, leading to increased production of cyclic AMP. Now post-tetanic potential, again it is when the volley of brief tetanizing stimuli or a train of brief tetanizing stimuli is presented to a presynaptic neuron. That means continuously, repeatedly we are stimulating the presynaptic neuron. Then what happens? There is increased secretion of increased amount of calcium ion in presynaptic neuron. And when the calcium ion will increase, it will lead to increase in the duration of action potential. So that will lead to increased postsynaptic response. Now long-term potentiation, it requires some special mention. So I will discuss it just after this slide. It resembles post-tetanic potentiation, but it is much more prolonged. Okay, so what is post-tetanic potentiation is that when we present a train or volley of tetanizing stimuli to presynaptic neuron, same here is applied. We are stimulating presynaptic neuron by a volley of tetanizing stimuli. So it leads to increase in the calcium ion. But here in case of long-term potentiation, this increase is very much prolonged than post-tetanic potentiation. And it is mediated by NMDA. It may be dependent on NMDA receptor or N-methyl D-aspartate, or it is independent of NMDA receptor. So first come to the mechanism of long-term potentiation, and it is studied mainly in the hippocampus, in the connection of the pyramidal cell in CA3 region to the pyramidal cell in CA1 region. And this type of model, it is known as Schaeffer's collateral. Now what happens here? Normally, you can see this is presynaptic neuron, which when gets stimulated, it stimulates secretion of glutamate. This is the postsynaptic neuron, which contains NMDA receptor and non-NMDA receptor. Okay, so first come to the name. What is NMDA receptor? It is N-methyl D-aspartate receptor. And in this study, in Schaeffer's collateral, non-NMDA receptor, they are AMPA receptor. The name is too long. It is alpha-amino 3-hydroxy-5-methyl isoxazole 4-propionic acid receptor. It is very difficult to remember even for me. So we will say it is the NMDA receptor and AMPA receptor. So two types of receptor are there. One is NMDA receptor. सबसे ऊपर जो रेड कलर में है, that is NMDA receptor, and below there is non-NMDA receptor, that is AMPA receptor. Now peculiarity of these receptors are that NMDA receptor is permeable to calcium ion, sodium ion as well as potassium ion, but normally they are in inhibited state due to presence of magnesium ion. Magnesium ion keeps this NMDA receptor closed. So what happens in normal stimulation, the glutamine is released and it cannot open the NMDA receptor. So only AMPA receptors are open. So sodium and calcium ion can move on either side through the AMPA receptors only. Now what happens when we give a volley of titannizing stimuli? The giving a volley of titannizing stimuli leads to release of magnesium ion from the NMDA receptor. Now magnesium ion are released from NMDA receptor. So calcium, sodium, potassium, all these are free to enter through the NMDA receptor in the postsynaptic neuron. Now when calcium enters into the postsynaptic neuron after opening the NMDA receptor by extruding magnesium ion, what it does, it forms calcium calmodulin complex. This calcium calmodulin complex, it has three features. It stimulates tyrosine kinase, it stimulates protein kinase C, it stimulates calcium calmodulin kinase. Calcium calmodulin, it stimulates calcium calmodulin kinase, it stimulates protein kinase C, and it also stimulates tyrosine kinase. These three, protein kinase, tyrosine kinase, and calcium calmodulin kinase, these three kinase, they generate a retrograde signal which is most probably nitric oxide. That means these three kinase, they generate most probably nitric oxide which moves retrogradely, means from postsynaptic neuron to presynaptic neuron, and here it enhances the release of transmitter, that is glutamate. So more and more glutamate are transmitted, so magnesiums are extruded, more and more NMDA receptors, they are open, and more and more calcium ion will enter into the postsynaptic neuron. Now another use of calcium calmodulin kinase is that it increases the number of AMPA receptor, or you can say it increases the movement of AMPA receptor from cytosol to postsynaptic membrane. So now the number of AMPA receptor also increases, so that also leads to increased influx of sodium ion or increase efflux of potassium ion. So all these things, it will leads to prolonged action potential generation in the postsynaptic neuron. So this is the method of, this is how the long-term potentiation is studied by Schafer's collateral. Now next is long-term depression, and it is opposite of long-term potentiation. It is due to slower stimulation of presynaptic neuron. When we stimulate presynaptic neuron, very slowly adaptation develops there, and that leads to slower rise in calcium ion. So the action potential in the postsynaptic neuron decreases gradually. Now the physiological basis of these reflexes and learning method or conditioned reflex is that there is development of intracortical and subcortical functional connection in the neurons. So when we learn new things, new connections between the neurons are developed and learning process gets advanced. So that is all about the learning. And along with learning, there is memory. Now what is memory? What we learn, that is stored in the form of memory. Usually we say that memory is that portion which can be recalled. अगर हम कोई चीज याद नहीं कर पाते हैं तो हमें क्या लगता है कि हमारी याददाश्त, हमारी मेमोरी खराब है. But actually memory is positive memory and negative memory. What is positive memory? Which memory that can be recalled, that is positive memory. And negative memory that cannot be recalled, that is negative memory. And 99% of our memory is negative memory, only 1% of the memory is positive. Now what are the circumstances or incidents which is selected as positive memory, and why the some are selected as negative memory? It is very important that to reject some events, and brain do not store those memories, because daily in our surrounding thousands or lakhs of incidents are happening, and if we try to memorize all those things, all the GBs of the brain will be full within a second. So the brain selectively keeps some incidents as a positive memory and rejected other as a negative memory. And here again there is role of sensitization and habituation, which is the function of reward and punishment center of the brain. That means anything which is happening around us, if it is stimulating our reward center or punishment center, हमें बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है या बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है, then that is memorized as positive memory. और अगर बाहर कुछ ऐसा हो रहा है जिससे हमें कुछ लेना देना नहीं है, like the chirping of birds or any some sound of fan or light is blinking, so those things that are not useful for our day-to-day life, that is rejected by brain as negative memory. Now another classification of memory is declarative memory, non-declarative memory. That can be also, it is declarative memory is also known as explicit memory, non-declarative memory is known as implicit memory. Non-declarative memory is also known as skill memory. Now what is declarative memory? It is the memory of an integrated thought, like memory of surrounding, memory of time relationship, memory of cause, memory of effect. Like आप कहीं घूमने जाते हो तो 2017 में गए घूमने, कहाँ गए, सराउंडिंग कैसा था, वहाँ पे क्या इम्पैक्ट हुआ, क्या इंसिडेंस हुआ, क्या इफेक्ट हुआ, all these integrated thought, they are grouped under declarative or explicit memory, and there is major role of hippocampus in declarative memory. The second type of memory is non-declarative or skill memory, and as the name suggests, it is the memory about the skill. Skill means driving, swimming, anything, dancing. So all these memory of these skills, they are grouped under skill memory or non-declarative memory. And majority of this depends on the neocortex, function of neocortex. Then another classification of memory is depending on the duration of memory, and it is known as short-term, intermediate long-term and long-term memory. Fourth, working memory is also used to classify about the duration of the memory. So first, short-term memory, it is the memory which lasts for seconds or up to minutes. थोड़ी देर याद रहता है फिर हम भूल जाते हैं. The intermediate long-term memories are those which last for days or it can last for many weeks and then we forget this. Long-term memories are those which can be remembered for years or for a full lifetime. पूरी जिंदगी भर जो याद रहे वो that is long-term memory. Sometimes the fourth one is working memory is introduced. What is that working memory? That during some intellectual works or doing some intellectual reasoning, some memory we can recall something. Example is, अगर हमें 10 डिजिट का कोई मोबाइल नंबर डायल करना पड़े तो हम देख के एक बार तुरंत डायल कर दे सकते हैं. उतने देर तक हमारी मेमोरी उसके लिए काम करती है. बट एक बार डायल खत्म हो गया, बात हो गई, तो फिर हम उस मेमोरी को भूल जाते हैं. बट इफ वी रिपीट दैट थिंग, कि किसी का नंबर डायल किया और वो 10 डिजिट को हम 10 बार 25 बार याद करेंगे, रिहर्स करेंगे, वी विल रिपीट, देन इट कैन बी स्टोर्ड एज और इट कैन बी लेंदेन एज शॉर्ट टर्म मेमोरी और इंटरमीडिएट और लॉन्ग टर्म. सो देर इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल ऑफ रिपीटिशन और रिहर्सल इन changing the short term or working memory into the long term memory. So here you can see one diagram is here, that is this is the sensory memory, working memory due to sensory input, and if we pay attention to it, it change into the short term memory, and by rehearsal it is stored as long term memory which can be retrieved when required. Now the neural basis of all these memory, the short term memory, those memories which are mainly reverberating circuit, which forms the reverberating circuit, that is a simple or very small input leads to a prolonged output. That type of circuit, they are responsible for short-term memory. And there is presynaptic facilitation or inhibition. They are also responsible for short-term memory that we have already discussed. Now, intermediate long-term memory, it is due to physical and chemical. It is either due to physical changes in the neuron or due to chemical changes in the neuron, or there may be both changes in the neuron. So first we will discuss about what are the chemical changes which occurs in the neuron during intermediate long-term memory. Again, there is role of habituation and facilitation. As we have repeated many times, the habituation is decreased progressive closure of calcium channel leads to decrease in the secretion of neurotransmitter. And the second is facilitation, sensitization you can say. About the facilitation, this is a very important diagram and it is studied in aplasia, how the presynaptic facilitation occurs. Here you can see it is a synaptic connection between three neurons. The one neuron that is labeled as sensory neuron, it is excited by sensory stimulus. So sensory stimulus excites which neuron? That neuron is known as sensory neuron. Then this sensory neuron is making synaptic connection with another neuron which is known as postsynaptic neuron. There is a third neuron which is making synaptic connection with presynaptic or sensory neuron, which is named here as facilitator terminal or facilitator neuron. Now what happens normally when we give some sensory stimuli, this presynaptic neuron is stimulated and it stimulates the postsynaptic neuron, and response, we get the response. Now what happens if this facilitator neuron is not stimulated along with this sensory stimulus? Gradually the response decreases. But what happens if we stimulate this facilitator neuron by any noxious stimuli? Then what will happen? This facilitator terminal, it secretes serotonin into the presynaptic or sensory stimulus. Now what is the role of serotonin? The serotonin increases the amount of adenyl cyclase, which increases the concentration of cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP increases or stimulates the synthesis of protein kinase. And these protein kinase, they phosphorylate a protein which is a part of potassium channel itself. That means, you know that due to influx of sodium channel, there is generation of action potential, and due to efflux of potassium ion, there is repolarization is there. This action potential ends due to efflux of potassium ion. So what happens when serotonin increases the cyclic AMP and it causes phosphorylation of protein which is present in potassium channel? The potassium channel, they get blocked. So now there is no efflux of potassium ion from presynaptic neuron. That will prolong the action potential in presynaptic neuron. So prolonged action potential will lead to increased amount, continuously there will be secretion of calcium ion, so there is increased amount of calcium ion, and that will prolong the release of neurotransmitter from presynaptic to postsynaptic neuron. That means stimulation or response from postsynaptic neuron is prolonged. So this is the mechanism of presynaptic facilitation. Now in the long-term memory, I have told that it is due to physical change or chemical change or both. We have discussed about the chemical change. Now about the physical change in intermediate long-term memory is same as physical change during long-term memory. So here it is the changes during long-term memory, and during establishment of long-term memory, it is mainly physical changes that occurs at the site of synapse. and those physical changes, it is increase in vesicle release site, increase in the number of vesicle released, increase in the number of presynaptic terminal, change in the structure of dendritic spine, and change in the number of neuron and their connections. So the number of vesicle increase, the vesicle release site will increase, number of presynaptic terminal will increase, dendritic spine will rearrange and structural changes are there, and the number of neuron and their connectivities all changes. So that is about the memory. Now next thing is consolidation of memory. What is consolidation of memory? When the memory consolidated, it almost remains stored as memory for full lifetime. So consolidation of memory is very important to recall it. Now during consolidation there is chemical changes, there are chemical changes, there are physical changes, and there are anatomical changes as well. Now next is, it is written that this process requires 5 to 10 minutes to 1 hour or more for strong consolidation. Means any sensory experience that is going to be consolidated, that is going to be transferred from short term to intermediate to long term memory, for consolidation at least 5 to 10 minutes to 1 hour is required. And what does it mean? That if just after any sensory experience, the person become unconscious or deeply anesthetized, or there is brain injury, the person forgets everything. That sensory experience is not stored as a long-term memory. कभी कहीं कुछ एक्सीडेंट होता है, हेड इंजुरी होता है, तो ऐसे पेशेंट में आप देखोगे कि क्या हुआ, कैसे हुआ, वो रिकॉल नहीं कर पाता है, बिकॉज जो भी हुआ उसके लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरी में जाने के पहले ही देयर इज हेड इंजुरी और द पेशेंट बिकम्स अनकॉन्शियस, सो दे कुड नॉट रिकॉल दोज थिंग्स. फॉर कंसोलिडेशन ऑफ मेमोरी देयर इज अ मेजर रोल ऑफ रिहर्सल. It enhances consolidation, and you know in day to day practice जब कोई ड्रामा होता है तो आप बार बार रिहर्सल करते हो, एक ही चीज को बार बार रिपीट करते हो. सो योर लॉन्ग टर्म, यू बूस्ट अप योर लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरीज. एग्जाम के समय पढ़ते वक्त हम एक ही चीज को 10 बार पढ़ते हैं, उससे क्या होता है, आप सिर्फ एक बार पढ़ के चले जाओ तो यू कैन नॉट रिकॉल ड्यूरिंग योर एग्जाम आवर्स. लेकिन उसी चीज को आप 10 बार पढ़ो, 20 बार, जितनी ज्यादा बार उसको रिहर्स करोगे, आपको एग्जाम में लिखते वक्त उतनी ही सुविधा होगी, उतनी ही आसानी से आप उसको रिकॉल कर सकोगे. सो रिहर्सल इट एनहांसेस द कंसोलिडेशन ऑफ मेमोरी. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट अबाउट द कंसोलिडेशन इज न्यू मेमोरीज आर कोडिफाइड ड्यूरिंग कंसोलिडेशन. नाउ व्हाट डज इट मीन्स दैट न्यू मेमोरीज आर कोडिफाइड? कोडिफिकेशन मीन्स व्हेन वी लर्न any new sensory experience, when any new memories are developing, they are not stored in the brain randomly. ऐसा नहीं कि कहीं भी रख दिया उस मेमोरी को ब्रेन में. What happens, the same incidents are pulled from different places, and then new memories, new incidents are similarities and dissimilarities of new memories are compared, and accordingly they are stored as memories. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर आपने कभी क्लासिकल डांस सीखा हो तो इट इज स्टोर्ड एट वन प्लेस. नाउ अगर आप अब वेस्टर्न डांस सीखना चाहते हो तो क्या होता है, ऐसा नहीं कि ये मेमोरी फिर किसी ऐसे ही जगह पे रैंडमली स्टोर हो जाएगी. जब हम नया चीज सीखते हैं रिलेटेड टू सम प्रीवियस थिंग, तो जो पहले जहाँ स्टोर है वो रिकॉल होता है, उसके साथ क्या सिमिलैरिटी है और क्या डिसिमिलैरिटी है, ये देखने के बाद नई मेमोरी स्टोर होती है. सो दैट इज नोन एज कोडिफिकेशन. सो न्यू मेमोरीज आर नॉट स्टोर्ड रैंडमली, rather they are codified. Now there is intracortical transfer of memory. That means the memory from one half of the cortex is transferred to other half, and many experiments are done to know that how they are transferred. In one experiment, a cat is blindfolded and it is trained with one eye only. Some stimulus is given to one eye and the response is noted. Then the open eye is blindfolded and other eye is tested for same stimulus and the same response is obtained. That means the memory from one half of the cortex is transferred to other half. So how this has been transferred? When optic chiasma is sectioned, even the intercortical transfer is preserved. But when the scientists section anterior and posterior commissure, then this intercortical transmission hampers. So it is said that intercortical transfer is mainly via anterior and posterior commissure. Now, neurogenesis also occurs in case of learning and memory. What is neurogenesis? Means genesis, synthesis of nerves, newer nerves. Now, previously it was believed that after birth, new nerve development of newer neurons are not possible. But now it is seen that with practice and with rehearsal, the newer nerves and their newer connections are generated, and it is studied mainly in the olfactory bulb and hippocampus. Now, role of hippocampus. The role of hippocampus in learning and memory. Sorry, F is not there. The role of hippocampus, hippocampus, it is a major output from the reward and punishment center. So you can know how important it is for the learning and memory. The hippocampus, it is actually hyper-excitable. It is even a very small stimuli, very weak stimuli can produce the epileptic seizures when the hippocampus is stimulated. And if we remove the hippocampus, bilateral removal, that leads to anterograde amnesia. We have already discussed with the limbic system that removal of bilateral hippocampus leads to anterograde amnesia. So what is that? Anterograde amnesia is loss of memory after the removal of hippocampus. So the role of hippocampus is mainly to learn the newer, any newer experience and to convert it from short-term to long-term memories. After removal of hippocampus, the long-term memories are not hampered. जो पहले से हो रहा था उसके साथ 10 साल 5 साल पहले से वो सब याद रहता है, but कोई भी नई चीज लर्न करने में, and those newer things which are mainly declarative, that is which is by audio visual input, that are hampered mainly, but the skilled memory, they are retained. That is the role of hippocampus. And the last thing is the applied aspect of learning and memory, that is Alzheimer's disease. It is the premature aging of the brain. That means normal aging क्या होता है, आपने घर में देखा होगा, जो भी they are more than 70 or 80 years of age, they usually there is difficulty in recalling something or remembering something. कोई भी चीज यहाँ रखा तुरंत भूल गए, क्या हुआ एक बात 5 बार पूछना. So that happens with age. That is the normal. But premature aging, from the middle age, from the age of 40 to 45, if such things happens, then it may be a feature of Alzheimer's disease. Maybe the person is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. It is characterized by amnesia, that is loss of memory, deterioration of language. जब कुछ याद ही नहीं रहेगा, they cannot put the word together properly, so there is the language deterioration will be there, and visuospatial deficits are there. The finding the common finding in case of Alzheimer's disease is the loss of neuron mainly in the limbic system and those part which drives the memory process. And pathologically what is seen in Alzheimer's, there is increased amount of beta amyloid peptide in the brain. In the widespread area of the brain, the amyloid plaques are formed in which the beta amyloid protein are traps, and that is the pathological kind, and that leads to Alzheimer disease, which can be exaggerated by vascular accidents.